Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Ricardo and I'm making this video for several reasons, but the main reason being that as somebody who enjoys learning languages as a hobby, I have been asked this particular question by many people that I've come across, even friends and family. They've always asked me, how do you learn languages? What's your secret? And to be honest with you, there really is no secret. It's just finding the right the right methods to use. And the funny thing, I guess, to add on to that is that people always ask me, "Oh, do you use Rosetta Stone?" Which is it's a little interesting, I guess, and it makes sense because we've all seen those Rosetta Stone commercials, and they do, I guess, a pretty good job advertising their products. And the quick answer to that is I don't use Rosetta Stone. I don't find it to be practical from my past experience, but I know there's other people out there that do use it and have had success with it. But today I'm going to be talking about another method, which is the Assimil series, which is actually based from a French company, but they do make language material for English speakers. And if you're an English speaker, they do make them for the following languages. They do have Arabic, Chinese, Dutch, French, German, Hungarian, Italian, Japanese, Russian, and Spanish. So those are the more commonly studied languages. So as a native speaker, you'll definitely have a good opportunity to use this method to learn a foreign language. And the Assimil method is actually, it can be used by just about anyone. It's aimed for people even who have no experience in the particular language that they're attempting to learn. So you can learn it as a complete beginner with absolute no knowledge of the language. And it could also be used by individuals that are, I guess, false beginners. You have a basic understanding of the language based on past experiences or whatever. So you can use that, and also for, I would say, low intermediate individuals who have studied this particular language for a decent amount of time, and you just want to use it as a way to reinforce what you've learned in the past, or if you forgot something. So the Assimil method, it comes in several ways, but the most common way to get it is to buy it in a package, which comes with CDs and a book, which I will show you in a second here. And that is the way that I would recommend that you get it with the book and the CDs, mainly because the CDs actually have recordings that are done by Assimil claims that they are done by actors and actresses who are native speakers of that language. So you really get the sound is very clear. The dialogue is easy to understand. So it gives you really an exposure of what the language sounds like. So I would say that it's essential to get them unless you have a previous experience with the language. Then you already know what it sounds like, and you might not need to hear the spoken language. But it all depends. It all matters, I guess, on a person by person basis. But again, I would recommend it with the CDs and the book. And this is what it looks like. This is actually the German version of it. It's a little, I think this is an older one. So the newer ones look a little more, I guess, updated, but this is still a pretty good course. I've used it, and they all pretty much look the same. They look something like that, but I know that the Assimil, the newer ones will look, this is just the book, I don't have the case with me, but it'll look something like this. So they look pretty similar. So, and my understanding is that the content will usually be the same. But again, this is the older German version. I think it's somewhere in the early 90s, so it's not too old. But there's definitely a more recent one, and you can obviously tell it's old because it looks like like an oversized VHS tape. So it's pretty cool, I guess. It brings back some good memories from back in the day when we had VHS. So when you open it up, you actually have CDs right over here. Sorry, CDs right over here. The camera's flipped, so I'm having a hard time. It's like I have dyslexia right now. But anyways, so here's the book right over here and the CDs. So when you take the CDs out, you will notice that there are about, let me just put this down, there's about, typically you'll find 4 cases with 4 CDs in them. And since the Assimil method has about 100 lessons, each track that you'll find on here will correspond to 1 lesson. And again, there's a total of about 100 for most Assimil courses that I've seen. And as you can see, they're labeled on the back. I don't know if they do this on newer ones, but I'm pretty sure they do. I don't think they would change that. But there's about, well, there's 25 tracks per CD. And each track, again, is corresponds to a dialogue in the book, which I'll show you in a second. So these are the CDs that you'll find in the Assimil course. And the book, this is what they look like. I actually, I'll pull all the ones that I have. This is my collection. It's fairly small, but they all look about the size of, you know, I would say a novel. They're about 350 pages or so. This is the Polish version. I'm learning Polish at the moment, but they don't have a version for English speakers, so I have to learn Polish through German, which you know, I'm not having trouble doing because I've learned German, or I've been learning German for a few years now. So this is the Polnish Ona series for German speakers, and this is the new French with these, the newer one with well, for English speakers. So again, that's the size of it. It's you know, fairly small, but I would say that the content here is pretty rich. And this is the German version, which I will use to just show you what it looks like inside. So I'm gonna actually turn to the very first lesson just so you have an idea on what it'll look like when you start it. This is what the, actually, let me just point out another thing. I will also talk about how Assimil, how the method works and how you're supposed to actually use it in correspondence to the provided CDs. But first, I just want to give a quick overview on it. So when you open up the book, it's sort of like a dual language book, meaning that on one side you will find the text written in German, and the opposite side you will find it written in English, which is the translation of the German. So I'm going to bring that closer to see if we can get a good view on that. There it is. So as you can see, this side over here is the German, and this side over here is just the English translation. So the way you basically, well, I'll leave that for later on. So also, I'll move on and show you what else is provided on this method. So you have the dialogue right there, and they're numbered 1 through whatever, depending on which lesson you are. They'll grow in number and in size as you go on. And as you can see, the sentences are pretty simple. Since it is the first lesson, you're going to start small, learn some basic sentences, some phrases and whatnot. So you'll typically find about 3 to 4 word sentences. And I'll just give you an example of what it looks like as you proceed through the book. You'll definitely find that the material gets a little dense, and this is from lesson 96, so it's towards the end of the book. As you can see, it has definitely grown by a lot in complexity and vocabulary. And you might be thinking now, man, that's pretty hard to understand. The other ones seem a little, you know, simple. But trust me, as you proceed through it, you will definitely find that you will understand what you're reading here. So that's just an overview on that as you get through the book, the complexity of it. And I'll just go ahead and go back to the first one here, the first lesson. And what else is provided in the book is this notes section right over here. There's a notes section here that goes with the German sentences. Right there you see how there's a parentheses and a number. So that number will correspond to the notes right over here. So the first parentheses there will tell you sort of, usually they'll point out and talk a little bit about maybe a vocabulary word, a grammatical aspect that you're going to be learning. And that's just so you just get an understanding of why that sentence is functioning the way it is. So it's a good idea to read the notes, and again, I'll talk a little more about that in a bit. And as we proceed through the book, they also actually have a pronunciation guide as well. That right there where it says Aussprache. So that is just to help you get the pronunciation down. And on the bottom here, you will find that, let me see, there's this section in German. It's it's Übung, which is an exercise section, and this is provided in all the Assimil courses. And this is just exercises that will, in this first part, you'll get just more sentences provided that include vocabulary that you just learned, and once you get further down the lessons, you'll also revisit some older vocabulary, so that way you reinforce what you've learned in the past. And you don't, well, I'll talk a little more about this when I get into detail about it, but you just have some more exposure to the language and different sentences. And again, as you can see, they're pretty basic since it is the first lesson. And on the opposite end, you just have an actual translation of it, so you know, in case you need to a reference to just make sure that you're understanding correctly, you could always look on the opposite side, which will have the translation. And the stories are actually pretty funny sometimes. As you see, sometimes they'll have those comic things on there. So they do try to add a little bit of humor, so it doesn't. So you're not learning a language, and it's not, boring and very formal. They actually include a lot of, I would say, informal speech to it. Just the way that you would hear it spoken out in the real world. I know sometimes textbooks, they'll do a good job at teaching you the language, but they'll unfortunately teach it to you in a way that you'll sound like a robot when you speak to native speakers. And the exercises actually continue towards the, this is the back page, but it's still lesson number 1. There is this fill in the blank section where, let me just see if I can focus on here a little bit. So as you can see on number 1, let me see, 5, okay, so number 1, there's that English sentence there. What is the tea like? And underneath it is a German sentence that's just the translation of that English sentence, and you're just supposed to actually fill in what is missing. So in this case, it would be what, and as you can see, there's 3 dots on the bottom, right there, or rather 3 dots where the word is missing. So that signifies that this is a 3-letter word, and you're just supposed to, based on the vocabulary, again, the answers are going to be words that you've learned, so you're not going to have to, dig through a dictionary or, look for some help finding the answers. These are typically going to be words that you've learned. Well, they should always be. So in this case, again, it's going to be what, which is V. And if you want to make sure that you got it correct, I think it's on, let me see, on the opposite end, it should be W-I-E, 3-letter word. To the answer, it's right there where it says fill in the blanks. There it is, number 1, V-I-E. So that's the answer. And you just go through them. And again, since it is the first lesson, they are pretty basic sentences. They're fill in the blank, and they're just used for as a way to reinforce what you've learned. So you can definitely get a lot from the Assimil method. And the next thing I want to talk about is how do you actually use it. I know I've gone through it and shown you basically what it looks like based on lesson number 1. And in the book itself, you'll find an explanation by Assimil and how you should use it. And I'm going to now talk a little bit about how to actually use the method itself. So what they recommend is that you just load the CDs, put them on your computer, transfer them to your MP3 player, your iPod, whatever it is that you use. Doesn't really matter. And I'll use actually lesson 1 as an example. So you go on track 1, which is what will typically correspond to lesson number 1. You'll hit play, and you just leave the book closed. You don't look at it, and you just listen to the track, listen to the dialogue. And of course, chances are you're not going to understand what is being said, which is perfectly fine. The main point is that you at least get an exposure to the way the language sounds, what kind of sounds it makes and whatnot. And of course, later on as you proceed, you'll definitely develop a way to understand the dialogue better. But again, since we're on track 1 here, you're not going to know anything. And I already said why. You should be fine with that. Again, you'll just use that as a way to get an exposure to the sounds. So the second step is to now listen to the recording a second time, but this time you open up the book and you find, in this case, lesson 1, and you press play on the track and you're reading the English translation. So you don't look at, in this case, the German. You're not going to look at the German dialogue, but you are going to listen to it, and while you're listening to it, you're going to just read along with the English translation. So once you're done with that, then you're going to actually pause the audio, and you're this time going to read the German side. And as you remembered, they're numbered right there. I'll just show you again. They're numbered right there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10. So what you're going to do is you're going to go through number 1, sentence number 1 right here, right? And you're going to try your best to read that sentence out loud. And again, you can use the translation or the pronunciation guide that they provide. And once you're done with line number 1, you look over to the English side and you just try to compare it. You're obviously not going to do much with it. Just compare it, get a feel for how they work in both languages, and you continue doing that until you finish the entire German sentences all the way up to 10. And once you're done with that step, what you're going to do in step, I guess this would be step number 4, you're going to read the German text out loud, and you can again use the audio guide or the pronunciation guide if you need to. And this time, what you want to do is not look at the translation. You just want to read in this case, the German without looking at the translation to the best of your ability. And when you're done with that, you're again going to actually listen to the recording twice. Once while looking at the English translation, and the second time you're going to listen to the audio while reading the German translation. And this should be, I think, at step number 6. You're going to listen to the recording again, but this time you're going to close the book. And at this point, while you're listening to it, you should actually have an understanding of what is being said. You should understand it a little more, and you should feel comfortable listening to it without having to read the translation or with the help of the German text. So step number 7, you again listen to it one more time, but this time while you're listening to it, you're going to pause the audio. So you press play, you listen to it, and as soon as it reads the first sentence, you're going to pause it and you're going to try to read it out loud, and you're going to press play again, and the audio is going to play line number 2 or sentence number 2, and then you're going to pause it, and then you're going to say it out loud. So you continue doing that until you finish the entire section, the entire dialogue. And when you're done with this should be the final step in the lessons themselves. And you can then move on to the exercises that I've shown you earlier and work through those. The first exercise, again, if you remember correctly, they were just supplementary sentences that they provided, just so you get more exposure to it. What I would recommend doing it, because Assimil doesn't really say what you should do with the exercises. Usually, what I would do is that I would translate them. I would look at the I wouldn't even try to look at the German translation, or rather the German side of it. Just look at the English sentences and try to translate them to German. In this case, since we're talking about the German one, right? So that way you get some experience, looking at an English sentence, thinking in German and writing it out. I would write it out also because I feel like that helps really retain what you've learned. And once you get to the fill in the blank, obviously you just work through those. You can write them out, or you can just verbally figure out the answers. It's up to you. And I think that's pretty much it. What you do with a lesson for Assimil. I think what they recommend to do is that, again, I say I think because there are definitely different ways to use the Assimil method, but I just want to talk about the way that Assimil explains it without adding some customary ways to use Assimil. Although I did mention the translation guide, but that's again because Assimil doesn't provide, at least to my knowledge, ways to do the exercises. And once you're done with lesson number 1, the next day you can again go back and just listen to lesson number 1, and just you don't really have to read the lesson. You can just listen to it, and you might still remember what you learned the previous day. But you can start learning or start working through lesson number 2 and do the same steps that I provided. So you keep doing that, adding a new lesson every day if you wish. You can break it up into maybe doing it 5 days a week and just resting on the weekends. Or if you want to just go straight through it without stopping, you can do it 1 lesson a day. So you'll have 7 done in a week. And you should be finished with it in about 3 months if you stay consistent with it. And you can definitely, by the end of it, have a pretty good understanding of the language that you're trying to learn. And you'll notice that you'll be able to read newspaper articles and maybe even simple short stories by that time. And this is definitely one fantastic way to learn a language. And again, I've used it to learn German, French, and currently using it to learn Polish and Russian. I don't have my Russian one at the moment here with me, but I'm using it to learn those 2 languages at the moment, and enjoying it and having, I feel, some pretty good success with it, and having a lot of fun with it as well. So I take that book with me everywhere I go. If I have to go meet somebody, I take it with me because chances are I'll be early and I'll just work through the book. But again, it's portable. It's not that expensive either. That's one thing that I forgot to touch up on. When I bought this Assimil German course, it cost me on Amazon. That's where I purchased it. I bought it for, if I remember correctly, with the audio CDs, it came out to be, I think, $50, which honestly is not that bad when you think about some other language programs out there that can cost easily over $100 and maybe $200. So it's still pretty decently priced. Again, I think I would recommend buying on Amazon because that's really the best place that I've seen them for cheaper. You could buy them through Assimil, but they'll be more, and of course you'll have to pay I think more for shipping. I'm not sure how much they charge since they are based in France. If the shipping would be more for those of us that live in the States, but if you're in Europe, it might not be a problem. But I know that you can also buy it through Amazon. They have Amazon sites for other countries in Europe as well. But that basically covers the Assimil method. I just wanted to, again, just give a quick overview on it and just try to give as much detail as possible without getting too specific, I hope. But if you do have any questions pertaining to the method and how to use it, if you're still unsure about something, if you want more information, please feel free to leave me a comment, or you can send me an email at syntaxrick@gmail.com, and I'll do my best to respond to your questions, comments, whatever it may be, as soon as possible. And again, thanks for listening, and I hope that you found some pretty good information on just another way to learn a foreign language. Thanks for watching.